Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is probably one of the biggest issues we're dealing with. There's so many people speaking out about it. Those 6 that did the video, we're speaking out about it. Rand Paul and others are speaking out about it. Thomas Massey, Lowell Nelson is. They call it murder for Christmas. Judge Andrew Napolitano speaking out about it. I hope they don't say, I'm getting murdered for Christmas. I hope that doesn't become a thing, folks. This can run off the rails as the president continues to push for more power. But even John and Nisha Whitehead, they're attorneys, speaking out about this too, Lowell.
Yeah, they sure are, Sam. Their column, again, treats this same subject. These extrajudicial killings in the Caribbean Sea, but this is really, it hammers home the point. They write this, quote, every military serviceman's oath is a pledge to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It is not an oath to a politician. It is not an oath to a party. It is not an oath to the police state, end of quote. And, that's the point that Sam made earlier in the show. I mean, folks, this is an oath to God that the service member will defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, just think about the words right there. The very words indicate that some enemies would be found at home. And in the case at hand, these enemies at home happen to be higher-ranking officers in the military. Even going up to as high as Secretary Pete Hegseth and President Donald Trump. They are violating their oath to God. Every military man in that chain of command is violating his or her oath to God. And so, the Whiteheads, they ask, what kind of country we have. Quote, do we live in a constitutional republic governed by the rule of law, or in a militarized police state where legality is whatever the person with the most power and the biggest army says it is? End of quote.
That's called a democracy, Lowell.
Yeah. Well, folks, the answer is painfully clear when you consider what our troops are commanded to do. The military member who fired the second attack, right, the what they call the double tap, the second tap, who fired that second salvo, or that second missile. I don't know exactly how many missiles they fired, maybe just 2, but whoever fired, pulled the trigger on that second salvo, he should have refused to obey the order. He should not even have asked what to do about the 2 survivors, because we learned from the Washington Post that there were, the military asked, well, what do we do about these 2 survivors? They shouldn't even have asked, Sam. They should have facilitated their rescue, right? And then,
they should have. And the problem is we don't know who gave the order. Right now, people are kind of running from it and kind of acting like they didn't give the order, or they this or that. And what we really need is video of what went down. Certainly, they've got it, so we can see what happened. Mm-hmm. We can see we need to understand who really gave the orders, and we need the communications released, the back and forth. When they said, what do we do? Who responded? Mm-hmm. Who gave? Okay, we need all that to become transparent, released, so that we can know what's going on. I promise you it won't be released, though, folks. This super transparent administration won't be so transparent. Mark my words, Lowell.
Yeah, it's like that helicopter video we saw in the Middle East, the one that got, what's his name, the Australian journalist in so much hot water, when he released to WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, right? That's his name. When he released that video of the helicopter attacking civilians, I mean, that really, caused a big splash, and it caught government with its pants down, so to speak. Well, what you're suggesting here, Sam, is that they ought to release the copy of the conversation held by, the people on site, in the Navy that were conducting this operation, and Pete Hegseth, because, apparently Pete ordered them.
Or maybe it wasn't even Pete, though. See, that's the point. We don't know. Who did they really talk to?
Yeah, we need that. We really do.
I mean, we assume it's Pete, but we don't know that.
Well, I think he owned it, Sam. Some of the stuff I've been reading indicates that he owned that. He gave a verbal order to kill him. And And
I understand. All I'm telling you is if he gave a verbal order
Yeah.
to somebody and then somebody gave it to them, somebody else is in the middle and they're culpable too.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole chain
So
of command.
I'm not
is
saying he's
culpable.
not owning it. I'm not saying he wasn't involved. What I'm trying to tell you is we need to know the truth so that all the players that are guilty need to be, in my opinion, they're guilty of war crimes, Lowell.
Yeah, they really are. And the Whiteheads point this out. There are three different laws that are being broken here, right? Basically, he says, first, Congress has not declared war, and only Congress may declare war. The president does not have the authority to start a war any more than the Supreme Court has the authority to start a war, right? Just think about that. I mean, that helped me put it in perspective. And, of course, that's not coming from the Whiteheads. I picked that up somewhere along the line, but can the Supreme Court of the United States start a war? Can they order military to fire on civilians? Well, no, they can't do that. Only Congress has the authority. Well, then can the president do that? Of course not. He doesn't have the authority. Only Congress has that authority. And so, I don't know, that just helps me put it in perspective that Congress is the only one that may declare war on somebody. Well, so they're violating constitutional law. Number two, they're violating international law, the law of armed conflict, and the law of the sea, which forbids the killing of shipwrecked survivors who pose no immediate threat. And number three, they're violating the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which requires every service member to refuse to obey manifestly unlawful orders.
And where they're going to play games is they're going to parse sentences and they're going to say they do pose a threat. So there you go.
Yeah.
Furthermore, it wasn't a shipwreck survivor. It was an intentional takedown of criminals, enemy combatants, you see. And when they frame it like that, see, then it's under wartime, kind of maritime debates, international discussions, and we pretend that it's not American law that's at the helm here. We try to remove it. So you're not people with due process, God-given inalienable rights. You're combatants, your enemies, your drug traffickers, and we create these labels then to back into this no man's land where, hey, whoever wants to call the shots can call the shots. What would happen if instead of us bombing that boat, say Russia came and took that boat out and took us out and said, hey, I'm the king of the seas, baby? Then what? See, would they have authority? No, of course not. And we would say they don't. But then how do we? So you got to think critically about these issues. I'm not here to attack Trump. I am here to tell you the constitutional realities, and I am here to say his actions do not square with the supreme law of our land. They just don't. Well, Tom Mullen does a great job following up on this too, Lowell.
Yeah, I'll say he really does. Quoting just part of his column, goes like this. Quote, President Trump said on Tuesday that in addition to the airstrikes on Venezuelan boats suspected of trafficking drugs to the United States, the U.S. military would begin hitting targets on land. Now, this is the first I've heard about this, Sam. That's why I'm quoting it. Not only are all these strikes unconstitutional by any construction, but they are also unprovoked acts of war against a country that poses no threat to the United States, end of quote. And then Mullen, he recites what's been happening in the Caribbean Sea. Basically, we've covered a lot of those facts again this morning. And then he writes this, quote, not one of those killed by American forces was charged with a crime in any court, much less convicted at trial. This behavior wouldn't pass muster under Magna Carta, written by barbarians by our standards today, much less the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, end quote. He really pulls no punches.
So a lot of people are piling on this, and it's breaking up MAGA like you wouldn't believe because people are saying, wait a minute, hold on, that's not what I signed up for. That's the problem. But he's got a great line in his column that I really think is worthy of highlighting. The United States was once considered an inspiration to the entire world, the land of the free, ladies and gentlemen. It achieved a society where the inalienable rights of the individual were much more sacred and more protected than any other society. That's something. And now we've lost that. Now we're like a drunk running around, just yelling as loud as we can and causing all these problems. And I don't even know what's going on here. But the problem is all the other countries are just waiting for us to pass out. Lowell?
That's right. And that's the most sobering question he ends his column with this question: will we ever sober up? You know, he's asking us Americans, are we going to sober up and stop this madness? Well, it depends on public outcry. If everybody called their congressman today and called the White House and said, stop doing this foolishness, you know, we might be able to make a difference. Politicians, they bend to the will of their constituents. I'm telling you that politicians do that because they always want to get reelected. And so I'm telling you that, you know, some people think it's hopeless, but I don't. I think if you talk to your congressman and enough people do that, they will bend to our will. We are the people. We hold the authority. We're the sovereigns. They are just working for us. Sam?
Thank you so much, Lowell Nelson. We appreciate you, sir. Great work.
You're welcome, Sam. Good to be with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, become part of campaignforliberty.org now. They do a great job. Ron Paul, Lowell Nelson, many others. Thank you so much. I'm Sam Bushman. We're syndicated by Loving Liberty Networks, lovingliberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save the Republic of the United States of America.